is now called to order. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. To welcome everybody to our meeting tonight, and we'll start by approving our agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda as presented?
No changes to the agenda. You should have an added sheet at your table. There was a sheet left off of the action sheet for monitoring report 2.1. So that goes right around page 41, I believe.
You are correct. Is there a motion, please?
Yes, Mr. President, I would like to make the following motion that the Board of Education approve the agenda as printed.
Thank you, Kurt.
Seconded.
Thank you, Bo. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes, and we'll move forward with our agenda. And our next stop is the Superintendent's Report. Mark?
Thanks, Randy. We have several items to update you on. The first of those is the bond project update. Mr. Edwards is here to run you through that.
Thank you, Superintendent Beelang, President Van Antwerp, members of the board, members of the community. Tonight I would like to provide the Board of Education with an update as it relates to our bond projects. And then lastly, I just want to bring the board up to speed with our current timeline for our architect and engineering firm. So first, we have our new light poles have been installed at Central's parking lot. They were installed last week. The project passed with all inspections. The parking lot is now accessible, and the overflow parking was beneficial for Friday night's game between Central and Northern. As you know, the actual parking lot was done some time ago, but we had to wait for the parking lot, the lights to be installed. So those have been installed, and now the space is available. Also, at Central, we're working with the softball dugouts, in which the board approved. Those dugouts have been demolished, and the contractors now are working on the foundation of the structure. Current timeline is still on target for the end of November for completion. At the Northern campus, where we are today, 5 benches will be installed. Those benches will be located around the retention pond, which sits behind the natatorium. If weather permitting, that project should be installed and completed this week. At Northern Middle School, we are replacing and relocating the lettering on the south side of the building where it says Portage North Middle School. The letters are not visible from the road because there's a tree that blocks the view. The letters will be moved to the right, more towards the east side of that south-facing wall. We're also changing the colors of the letters to be darker because at the current color of the letters with that brick, it's hard to see the letters on the wall. At West Middle School, commissioning is totally complete. All is well there, but meanwhile, we have installed a fence inside the storage pole barn. If you were at the Portage invite, you may have noticed a pole barn just behind the building. Inside of that, we put a partition fence so that the cross-country material can set on one side, and then West Middle School can use the other side for the fine arts and drama department to store their supplies and props. Prior to the storage barn being built and before the school was remodeled, all of those things were inside of a wood shop classroom that was not in use. During renovation, the storage barns were built. Right now, you will probably see some storage pods that we rented during the renovation project to keep those supplies there. And as soon as we empty those pods, we'll get that removed from the grounds once the pods are empty. And then lastly, just moving towards our 2021 bond, our elementary bond, an RFP for the architectural and engineering services was issued on September 29th. The RFP was open to firms that had a presence in Southwest and West Michigan. A pre-proposal hybrid in-person and virtual meeting was held on October 4th. We invited all the firms that received invitations. The firms had an opportunity to ask any clarifying questions about the RFP. After the meeting, we gave the firms a tour of Central Middle School and a tour of Mooresbridge Elementary School. That was just to give them a flavor of kind of the previous work that has been done at Central so they can see the level of excellence that we expect in this new project, then also Mooresbridge because that's a renovated project that's scheduled. The deadline for the RFP is Wednesday, October 13th, just a couple days away at 1 o'clock. Our selection committee will review the proposals on Friday, and from that, the invited firms will be notified and invited for interviews with the committee on next Wednesday, October 20th. We plan to bring an architectural engineer firm recommendation to the Board of Education either October 25th or the November 8th board meeting. So that concludes my presentation in regards to our current bonds as well as our 2021 bond timeline. I'll be happy to answer any questions for the board.
Was there good interest in the RFP?
Yes, we did a short list and we invited roughly 7 architectural firms that have a presence in the Southwest and West Michigan. And these are all firms that have active projects or historical projects in school settings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Johnny, appreciate
Thank you.
it. Our second report this evening is an update on all things CTE, and Dave Campbell, Superintendent of K-RESA, is here along with Eric Stewart, and as they're working their way up to the podium, they'll brief you on the work that's been taking place, especially most recently some of the activities occurring through K-RESA. So welcome, Dave and Eric.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having us. Really appreciate it. Mark, you've already introduced Eric Stewart, but I want to do that as well. Eric's our Assistant Superintendent of Career and Talent Development, and started right at the beginning of a pandemic. It's been quite an interesting ride, and it's really a pleasure to see all of you again face to face. So we've got a presentation. We're just going to we're starting off. I thought, let's start off with something they've all seen before, kind of draw back to prior learning, they call it. And so we're going to start here with come on now. Is there a particular place I should point this? Okay, there we go, the 127. This was our kind of a campaign theme through the CTE Village in November of 19. Just to refresh your memories, for every one job that requires a master's or PhD, there's 2 that require the bachelor's, and there are 7 that is a skills certificate, associate degree level jobs. These are the middle class and higher level jobs. This is just the reality of our economy. We thought, well, let's build the campaign, let's build the messaging around the reality that our kids face, which is really different than the reality that most of us faced when we were leaving school. This slide here, I love how we begin with outcomes. You know, Stephen Covey talked about begin with the end in mind, right? And we'd like to begin with the end in mind, the 21st century skill development. These are the core skills that kids need to be successful in this economy of creativity, of communication, collaboration, critical thinking. That's those 21st century skills. And then integrating and applying the learning, not just learning something rote, but learning it and applying it in a project-based way. Learning the harder skills. So you got the soft skills, hard skills. You heard that comparison. We've got this new framing that we're using now that we didn't have in the campaign, but it's harder. It's harder to teach those soft skills. In this culture especially. Holy cow. It is a hard time to teach the soft skills, the 21st century skills, and the dedication and the hard work and those kinds of things. And then lastly, I just had to speak to this one because I was so pleased. It was about 2 years ago, maybe a little more, that you guys, Mark invited me to hear Quentin Studer speak to the city council and to you as a school board. And you might remember at the end of the presentation, I asked him, I said, what's one thing that a community should put on a billboard? Anybody remember this? That's one thing a community should put on a billboard that would speak to the future of that would be really important. He said the percentage of kids earning skill certificates. And I thought, yep, that was so validating of the year or so of research that we had done. And I did not pay Clinton to say that, I promise you. But it was very validating that that's the realm of education, the technical skills that's really valued by so many employers now, and that's not projected to end. And so that's just some introductory thoughts here, and Eric's gonna take it the next step. There you go.
Well, thank you all for having us out here tonight. Excited to be at the stage that we are, for us to be back on the road talking about the initiative. What you see on the screen here in front of you, and hopefully in the packets in front of you, we surveyed as part of our plan development, and we were preparing our course recommendations. We surveyed dozens and dozens of local employers, and we asked them, out of a list of 11 soft skills, or as we call them, harder skills, and that's the perfect framing for any of you employers in the room. I know you know that. We asked them, what would be your top 5? And every single survey came back with the same top 5. They weren't ranked in the exact same order in the top 5, but the top 5 were all the same, and they sit there in front of you. Self-management, communication, problem solving, critical thinking, and collaboration. So our team, particularly our CAE team, has, and you can actually go ahead and flip there. Well, I'll get back to the top 5 in just a second. These are our 4 commitments through the millage. You'll recall this language from 2019 and the lead up to 2019. You see there that we're committed to preparing young people for well-paying, high-demand occupations in our local labor market. This redesign is really rooted in equity, and so we're focused on preparing a system of CTE that works for all kids. We're making sure that we're aligning with industry trends. We've taken a painstaking process to make sure that we're in alignment with our local labor market. When I say local, I mean Kalamazoo County, Southwest Michigan. And we're making sure we're teaching students skills and competencies they'll require to navigate an ever-changing labor market. The world of work is changing right in front of us, right? We're still in the midst of a pandemic that literally changed the way this country works. And you wrap that up with automation and any other advances in technology, and it's less important, though it's still important, that we teach a kid how to operate a specific machine and teach them more about the process of how they learn to operate a specific machine, or how, more importantly, how they learn those 21st century skills that I was mentioning earlier.
This is a timeline that we put together it's a little bit of refresher to bring memories up to speed. You've heard me present on all these things at different times here at the board meetings. I've always appreciated the invitations. And so I'm going to fly through them, but we started off in 2017. What started the conversation? A continuous improvement data review with our superintendents, where we looked at our EFE data and said we can do better. We saw equity issues in there. We saw low participation rates. It just was not where we needed to be. And so the conversation starts with data. Then we enter into the study phases that you've heard presented, where we did some deep learning, first as educators, and then as a larger community with 3 different design teams put together, about 75 people that put together the core of frankly, of the millage proposal. And then, as you can see there, that of course passed. And then, rolled 2,000 rolls along. And we immediately out of the chute, and Eric will touch on this more, starting with the career awareness and exploration, helping little kids see what they can be. We don't need a new career center for that. We just need kids for that, and we've got kids. So that was our first work. Consulting with an international consultant named Mark Tucker to get us off on the right start. Restructured the leadership team. We began a local and national labor market analysis, which we'll touch on, and a lot of employer surveys. And then now we're in the point of refining here in 2021, and more community engagement, business engagement processes. We're cultivating the private-public partnership with Southwest Michigan First. Continue to be very optimistic about that partnership. Despite the leadership changes and pandemic, yes, things have absolutely been slowed down, but we remain very optimistic about that. We're engaging continually with, we've hired an architectural firm, engineering firm, And they've consulted with a firm that's designed some of the most advanced career tech centers in the country. So that's an overview there. We're heading into, we've just begun our design phase. We had 2 full-day design charrettes, and we had great participation from almost every school district, a lot of business partners, community leaders. Were involved, about 40 people in our initial conceptual design charrette process last week. Really appreciate those participants. So that's an overview of the timeline, and then we're going to get back into a little more of the details of what's been going on since then.
So that's the question we get quite a bit. So the millage passed in 2019. You know, we always get asked, where's the Career Center, right? That's the number one thing. We talk about the planning for the Career Center and everything that Dave just spoke about, but we remind folks that the work of the comprehensive redesign of the system of career and tech ed in Kalamazoo County begins in kindergarten and goes all the way up. And so we've been about that work since 2019. On your screen, you'll see a continuum of services that our career awareness and exploration team has been engaged in with Portage and with the other local school districts. That really is a K through 12 continuum of services. We've hired 6 full-time career coaches that have been out in the local districts focusing on 4 primary objectives. And that's to help kids develop in the areas of self-awareness, option awareness, financial literacy, and innovation, which is really entrepreneurship. And you'll see on the screen here in the next couple slides a few examples of what we've been about. Whoa, this thing's going, it's got a mind of its own here. Let me try one more time. There you go. What you see there is an example, is basically a menu of presenters we've had from a series we call Real Careers, Real Talk, where we had students engaged with speakers from around the community that took pathways, various industry pathways, through their education and have now been engaged in their career for a while. So you'll see some familiar faces on there likely. And the good thing about this is it's students that represent all different kinds of demographics, all different kinds of industries. And so it really helps students see what they can be. Lemonade Day was a really fun entrepreneurship activity that we engaged in over the summer, where it's a national curriculum that we spent some of our summer months here with students, helping them start a business plan, getting supplies, the supply chain management side of starting a business, setting up a financial plan, and actually operating a lemonade stand in the community. And that was a great success that we hope to continue to expand upon in the days and the months and years to come. Work-based learning. I call this the ultimate career awareness and exploration experience. This is a continuum of services that we have work-based learning coaches in all of our schools preparing. All the way up from at the top of the funnel, our My Career Quest Southwest, where students really start to engage with local employers, down through the tip at the bottom there of apprenticeships. We were the recipient of a Department of Labor apprenticeship grant to help build out youth apprenticeships here in Kalamazoo County. Work with employers at developing youth apprenticeships that articulate with registered apprenticeship programs where students can actually earn hours for their apprenticeship while they're still in high school. That's a powerful experience that goes beyond the classroom that really will pay students very quickly out of school. A couple stats I just wanted to hit you guys with. How is this impacting Portage specifically? We hosted a career exploration day last year for middle school students. We had 503 kids from West Middle School, 577 from Central Middle School, 450 from North. We hosted a career chat challenge where we had Portage students out there in the community talking with local employers about what do you do for a living? What does this take? And all that. We had 997 students from Portage participate in that program. Zello, it's our online career awareness and exploration platform. We actually make employment plans with students. We had 1,946 people students from Portage registered on Zello last year, with over 9,000 visits to the site. And we have 5 of your staff engaged in a year-long cohort called Career Champions, where we're teaching staff within Portage Public Schools how to be career champions right here, how to be career development experts for their students here in Portage.
I'd like to just interject there. It's been a tremendous partnership, the KRESA Portage Public Schools partnership, because you've had some wonderful experiences in place for kids for a long time. Kelly Jensenius is one of the lead voices in the county on how to put together these programs. And so I just want to make sure to thank your leadership. Your foundation has been exceptionally supportive of these efforts. We appreciate that.
Transitioning off of the career awareness and exploration topic to the Career Center itself, one of the questions we get asked a lot in the build-up to building the Career Center is what courses are going to be offered in the Career Center. We undertook a four-step labor market, very intensive labor market analysis, which you see outlined before you. I won't read all of those elements back to you, but what I will say is this is an exhaustive research effort with our partners at the Upjohn Institute and the University of Michigan Youth Policy Lab to figure out what's in demand in the local labor market, what kind of pathways can we create at a career center, are they well-paying jobs if we created pathways within specific industries, and will students be likely to gain employment in them post-graduation. These are our scoring criteria. Again, I won't read those. I know we're up against time a little bit, but we broke it down with three primary criteria. That's well-paying occupations, high-growth occupations, and projected number of job openings in an occupation. So does it pay well? Are there jobs? And do we think those jobs will continue to grow? This is, and I'm sorry I didn't pass those out, but I will right after I'm done here. This is, I have one for each of you, a list of the course recommendations as recommended to the KRESA board and affirmed for purposes of conceptual design for architects. These are the programs we're going to be offering initially at our Career Center. So you can see the multiple pathways and multiple industries. And there's still some satellite offerings and some offerings that will remain right here in Portage Public Schools. So when we talk about world-class CTE, what we're really talking about is two things. People say, what is world-class CTE? Really what we're talking about is the intersection point between labor market opportunity, what we just went through, and a rich student experience. We can't lean too heavy towards the labor market side of things. We want to make sure this is offering kids a rich student experience. So we've been researching what the best in the country is in providing that experience. And we think we got some great examples that we've been benchmarking against. Dave, I think I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Okay. Well, in terms of the Career Center itself, actually, I think you may have seen these slides before. I pulled out some old ones, because some things have not changed. Centrally located, that was the recommendation of our design teams back in 2019. Ease of access, student transportation, the proximity. When we did our focus groups in every high school in the county, kids were consistent, saying, you've got to simplify this because this double bus route system's not working for me. It's the number one reason kids weren't signing up. So Sprinkle Road, Portage Road, I-94 corridor, that's the center of the county. That's where our Career Center will be located. We hope to have an announcement fairly soon on that as we're working through various site options. We want something with attractive curb appeal that communicates that career tech ed is important. Right now, we don't communicate that to kids through our facilities and through our priorities as a county. It just hasn't been a county priority, but that is changing. Communicating that to students, families, educators, and employers. Really important on the educator side. Teacher recruitment is the heart of a great school. You all know that. You're able to recruit and retain some outstanding teachers here. They're the core of your school. And a Career Center greatly helps with teacher recruitment. We lose our career tech teachers oftentimes to other counties simply because they have the Career Center and that priority. So that's an important element. And then a couple of other thoughts here. An adaptable space, flexible, because the economy is going to change, the needs of the center is going to change, the needs of the kids, the employers are going to change. Don't build something that's all concrete block that's just unmovable for decades. Accommodating to phased facility growth, depending on the needs of students, the employers, expansion. We've got a lot of kids in this county and a very low percentage participate. We anticipate a lot of the activities will cause that to expand and expanding the Career Center. So we'd like a place that has space to grow and provides use of the greater community during non-peak school hours. This is something we're talking with Southwest Michigan First about. They like this phrase, never go dark, where businesses might be able to lease some space, lease a teacher to train some employees in the evening, and as an example. And that was another reason, for keep it in the center of the county. That's the industrial base of the county. This is where a lot of the employers are. Facility must facilitate the development of 21st century schools. That's why we are doing this, is develop those skills. Facilities can facilitate behaviors. And this is just a neat slide that our architect shared with us. I know you've heard of Abraham Maslow. If you think back to those psychology days in high school or college, the basic human needs, food, clothing, shelter. Well, they put this into a facility, the Maslow's theory into facilities. You got your basic needs of a facility, right? You got to heat it, you got to cool it, you got to have enough space. Program needs, okay, what are the program needs? School design 30, 40 years ago just stopped there. Now they're looking at student-centered needs. What would it take? How can you make a building feel more welcoming? Feel more welcoming to a student. There are little things that you can do. Sometimes they cost quite a bit, sometimes they don't, to make it a more welcoming place for more students. What kind of community needs? How do you design it with the community in mind so the community members can be in the evening, or do you not? And so having these in the conversation before the first day of design, and then we get to that facility actualization where facilities begin to transcend and actually facilitate the desired outcomes. Now, people at the end of the day are going to make or break your culture. We know that. We know that. But facilities absolutely can help facilitate what we're trying to accomplish. And that is the end of our presentation. We welcome any questions that you may have.
I've got one. So first of all, this is exciting, and I can't wait to hear the location and the property. I know it's something you've been working on for a long time, and I totally agree that curb appeal matters, for lack of a better term, that it's just one more way to turn people on to that, turn the kids on. So when I worked for the Home Builders Association, I had the opportunity to work on the Construction Trades Committee and spent a fair amount of time lobbying our legislators on the whole idea of getting 16-year-olds so that it is okay for them to work on construction job sites. So in agriculture, they can be on site at 14 and sometimes earlier. At 16, they can do any fast food job, any retail job, on and on and on. But they can't work on a construction site to move 2x4s from one pile to the next. And so by the time they're 18 and they can do that sort of work, they're already off doing something else. Has any progress been made on that? I mean, it was, when I was out talking to people, there was universal 100% agreement, but
There still is.
Yeah.
There still is universal.
it's always like,
agreement.
yeah, we should do something
Yeah.
about that.
We talked to some state legislators about that last week, actually. Short answer is no, not a ton of progress. I will say, though, that's where the power of career and tech ed programs really come to life, because there's things you can do within the context of a career and tech ed center with a certified teacher, with all the safety standards being met, that child labor laws, I say this the right way, child labor laws might not permit, right? And so some of the child labor laws are very, very restrictive. And you got to ask yourself from time to time, is it in the student's best interest, right? Or is it in the employer's best interest? But that's where the controlled environment of a career tech ed center, right? Like a construction trades class. We can really do a lot of creative things, not to get around any of that, but to bring that experience to life, to keep kids' spark going until they turn 18, and to actually teach them how to do the work to benefit the employers.
Sure.
It's a tricky needle to thread. It really is. But
Well, I certainly encourage any pressure that can be continued
Yes,
to be
sir.
put on there, because I think there were an awful lot of excited kids who had to be turned away because they were just too young.
yes, sir.
So are we a couple weeks from announcements or a month from announcements? How far do we think we are away?
I'm optimistic that we're getting pretty close. That's pretty darn vague, and I apologize that I have to be that vague. That's not how I like to be.
Because you have 2 or 3 steps, right? I mean, you got to look at name a site and name that you're going to build the building, right? Or is that all going to happen at the same time?
No, I would think it's a couple of steps, and site location matters a great deal.
Right.
And then there's a capital campaign that we've been involved with Southwest Michigan First on that, and that appears to be going reasonably well. That's really nothing new from 2 years ago. that I could talk about.
Right, I mean, obviously, your timeline says you want to break ground next year, so you don't have a lot of time to.
Yeah, Southwest Michigan First and K-RESA did a joint press release or announcement in May of this year with that, breaking ground on a new career tech center in the fall of '24. So that was a joint statement that was released. So we are working to that, and we're designing towards that, and our architects believe we can hit that. It's tight.
Dave, not a question, but I just want to thank you and express, continued enthusiasm, and it's good to get this update. And for me, when I see the course recommendations, it starts to hang meat on the bones. I mean, more than just the concept of a physical space, which is wonderful, but to start to see some of the more specific, classes that are going to go on in there. This really helps me. So
In the labor market analyses, the thorough processes that we went through, that was part of the time consuming. You get one chance to do it right. Are you going to align it with this economy, or are you just going to copy paste what you did and move EFE into a career center? We're committed to not just moving it in, but doing the labor market analyses, doing the surveys, the focus groups, getting it right, reset, and move forward into continuous improvement processes from there.
Yeah, Dave, I was just curious, is there any set amount for the facility that's been discussed, or I know you're working on architects, it's hard for them to know if they don't know how much money they have.
It sure is. Yeah, when we issued the RFP for the architects, we did a two-tier RFP that aligned perfectly with our campaign literature, where the campaign literature is saying, okay, we'll either do a new facility, and so bid at that, and then it'll be a renovation of an existing facility, a big box store or something like that. And so, that's a tricky RFP process, but that's what you do when, I've been, had the privilege of being part of 2 bond issues as a local district superintendent, and I have to say, that was far easier. You knew exactly what you were asking for. We're asking for $144 million. You know what your budget is. The community knows. They vote yes or no, and you proceed forward. This is more complicated, but it's also nice not to be asking people for a tax increase. And so, no is the answer. There's not a dollar figure that I can share at this point. And again, I'm sorry about that.
No, it's exciting. My next question, you answered, I said, are you considering I was going to ask if you're considering any other existing facilities, and you said, you indicated that could be a potential.
We have looked at some. And we've got a little list of, okay, depends on how is this going to go, and we're nearing that point where it's a go, no go.
Yeah.
So we have options that we've analyzed, we've had professionals analyze, and we'll be moving. Good question.
Thank you.
Could you speak a little bit to the architect that was selected and the reason for that?
Sure. We selected Whiteman, which is a firm frankly I didn't have much familiarity with, at least that I knew of. I'm trying to become a better delegator, and I delegated to Eric and Scott Thomas and Tom Zarder, 3 of my assistant soups, to go through a very thorough process. As it turns out, I knew a couple of people on the Whiteman team from a bond issue I helped pass in '02, and worked with an architectural firm that had 2 or 3 of the same people on the firm. They were very good to work with. Whiteman, one of the main things we went with them was the details of the contract were very positive. That was really positive. But really the seller was, they had an exclusive contract with DLR, which is a national architectural firm that has designed some of the nicest career tech centers in the country. And frankly, we in fact, 2 weeks ago, Eric and several of our folks, we went out to visit a career tech center outside of Phoenix and one outside of Denver that DLR designed. This is the high-end career center. We would like to visit one in Michigan. There just isn't one in Michigan that is like what we visited. It's kind of that 21st century, and they're designed to facilitate the 21st century skills. You walk in and it just breathes innovation and collaboration. There's very intentional designs creating collaborative spaces. If you want kids to collaborate, then create a space for them to collaborate. If If you want teachers to collaborate, then create a space for them to collaborate. So you have a teacher workroom, you know, you can picture a teacher typical workroom. Okay, is it really designed to collaborate? Well, this one is divided in half, nice individual workspaces, probably 10 over here, 10 over here. What's in the middle? A kitchen with a counter and a microwave. It's just kind of a natural. You want people to collaborate and to talk? Okay, those little things make a difference. And in terms of the student spaces, you know, where you've got the classroom space, the lab spaces, spacious, the workspace is spaced properly so that it's safe, and creating, again, the collaborative spaces to facilitate that. So really, honestly, the hiring, they're exclusive with DLR, and what we had heard about DLR, like, and then the contract details are what sold us with White. And they're a good Southwest Michigan firm.
Yeah, the community, I think, is just going to be very pleased with the end result.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks,
Thank you.
Eric. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
While they're walking off, just a couple more items of information. Enrollment last week was our count day, last Wednesday, and right now our head count, and this is unaudited, is 8,663 students. If you factor in the weighted, that amount will count 90% of the formula. 10% is going back to spring of last year. So when you factor this in, we're about 16 students ahead of what we budgeted for. So that includes all of our just PPS students. We have some other students that are
6-0.
You said 60?
16.
16. 16
I'm
more.
sorry, it echoes.
Yeah, I'm sorry for that.
1-6.
No,
so-
we heard 1-6, 16
okay.
students. More than we budgeted for, but we still, again, these are unaudited numbers. It does not include our off-site students that are through our parochial schools that we provide services to. So we'll have more information as that comes along. We still have, just to give you a sense of, most of those students are face-to-face, but at the high school level, we have 90 students that are in virtual, 51 at the middle school level, and 124 at the elementary level that are receiving instruction virtually. Transportation, first off, just congratulations to our transportation department. We just recently completed our bus inspections. We call it 100% green tags. We had 2 buses that had some factory defects that caused them, you know, a flag to be raised, but we took the buses straight up to the dealer and had it repaired, and so it didn't count against us. So we have a great bus fleet. But we're transporting, this year we have 4,377 students signed up to ride the bus. And not all of those students ride, because some ride in the morning, maybe they have an activity afterwards that they're involved in, but that's what we have signed up. And that compares to about 4,800 students that we were transporting pre-COVID. And we've made adjustments to the routes over this time period as well. So we have 5 fewer routes this year than we did in years past. So right now we've been able to run all of our routes, but it's awful close, so we're still looking for drivers that are interested in driving our kids around. And then the last thing, just tomorrow is our bond sale, so we're ready to go tomorrow. We've got a call tomorrow morning with our financial folks, and we're keeping our fingers crossed for good results. So happy to answer any questions on those 3 additional items.
I'm not sure if it's with a lot of the elementary schools, but at one particular elementary school, the line is all the way out in the mornings, all the way out on Angling Road. And I don't know, it just seems so chaotic, but it moves smoothly eventually, but it's such a long line.
We
So-
have that at almost every
Every
school.
school, okay.
Every school building is experiencing a lot of parent drop-offs.
Okay.
And it's not a very, the length of day, it's not a very long problem, but it is pretty congested during those times. So I know we're looking at West Middle School in particular, we're looking at the traffic flow there and how we might improve that. We still have some funds allocated for that project. And we're also looking at traffic flow at Central Middle School to try to get vehicles off of Westnedge quickly. But I don't know as if you could ever develop enough stacking space on site. I mean, parents pull in and they wait until, they can, drop their kids or they want to drop them off close to the door. So I don't know if we could ever get all the cars off of the streets and into our property to resolve that. So we keep looking for other ways to address that. But it's everywhere, Celeste.
Yeah, okay. Just curious.
That's it for the updates. Ready to go into board education.
Oh, we sure are. Thanks for all the news, Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah. Board education is next. Presentation of monitoring report 1.1.
But following past procedure, we've moved this part up to the beginning of the meeting, and this part in this 1.1 in particular is you'll get 3 reports today, next month, and then December. And then the final report will come to you in January where you take action. So no action is required after the report today, but Dr. Pasco is here to present.
All right. Good evening, Superintendent Beeline, trustees. Like Mark said, I'll be presenting to you Monitoring Report 1.1 tonight. Get used to this clicker. Okay. What I'd like to do tonight is review the main highlights presented in the first of our 3 monitoring reports and some of the key elements. We're going to focus on high school assessments this evening. This is our first year of having MR11 organized by high school, middle, and elementary school. You remember the recommendation for this change came back in January of 2019, and that was based on the state's adoption of PSAT and SAT as benchmark assessments and our use of K-5 literacy and mathematics assessments. So also this evening, I'll present briefly on the implications of COVID on our school data to give an overview of all the assessments that are utilized throughout Monitoring Report 1.1. I'll also highlight a number of data elements from the report, and then finally, we'll share some of the next steps that we're taking to ensure that we're responding to our data to improve student learning. As you know, there's always implications to large instructional shifts like the ones that COVID-19 has influenced. As a review, in spring of 2020, in the early stages of COVID, the state of Michigan suspended all statewide testing, and we also suspended all of our internal screeners. The testing environment at that point in time to conduct any of our screeners was not appropriate to receive authentic results. The state also had no accountability or expected results from any district in the state of Michigan. So as we move forward, or going back to the 2021 school year, the state was expecting us to assess students using the PSAT and SAT spring assessments at the high school level. At the same time, the state informed us that there would be no accountability on these assessments. So this would mean that our school report cards would not be adjusted based on the information. It also meant that schools throughout the state were not expected to meet the 95% participation rate in terms of students to be tested. What this means is with our comparable districts, we do not have an accurate way of knowing the percentage of students that were tested in each of the districts. All of these elements combined indicate that we need to take this year's data and apply it very carefully, especially when we try and identify instructional changes or improvements. While assessment data of this type does indicate areas where we need to apply focus, the last 2 years of data requires us to be more thoughtful, as it is more incomplete than previous years. Point it up to the booth, that's the trick. By reorganizing Monitoring Report 1.1 into high school, middle, and elementary school reports, we're also able to present assessments in a slightly different format. So moving forward into future years on Monitoring Report 1.1, we'll be utilizing these assessments as listed on this chart that you see, also in your packets. High school reports will be focusing on PSAT 8-9, PSAT 10, and SAT, as we do receive comparable district information from our SAT results. Also, in future monitoring reports for 1-1, we'll be able to include M-STEP science and social studies as part of our accountability measures. So this table that you see up here includes the name of the assessment, the topics assessed, the grade levels that it applies to, the level of each assessment under scope, and it indicates when comparable district information is available. So this is a nice one just to summarize all of the things that we'll be including moving forward. All right, I'd like to go over some of the highlights that are available in the data on the pages of the report. The first, which is the graph you see here and on page 7 in your packet. This is the total SAT average score for our students in spring 2021. A reminder, this data does not include alternative high schools in any district. This includes both the evidence-based reading and writing as well as the math score combined. If you take a look at the graph across the horizontal axis, I know you've seen this before in the past, you'll see all of our comparable districts listed and the state is on the far left. As you move from left to right, you're increasing the percentage of students that receive free and reduced lunch, which is our measure for economically disadvantaged. So you'll see, I believe, Hudsonville with the lowest and the highest, and Granville on the far right. Information available on the trends, which would be on pages 10 and 13 in your 10 to 13 in your packet. One positive highlight in this data is that when we look at all of our 11th grade students who took the assessment, our students scored quite well, ranking first among our comparable communities. So looking more deeply at this data, it is a decline over the previous years when looking at the overall average score. And again, we'll get to that when we look at some of the trend data on 10 to 13. It is a point to be celebrated that our 11th grade students performed this well, keeping in mind we had about 81 of the 523 juniors in spring of 2021 that did not take the SAT. So we had about an 85% participation rate, which we thought wasn't too bad given the circumstances. Looking specifically at the SAT evidence-based reading and writing on page 8 in your report, we did see some improvements in our students who are economically disadvantaged in their score on the SAT. In this graph that you see up here, the vertical axis represents the percent of students college ready, in which we saw about 54% of our economically disadvantaged students tested and met the benchmark for college readiness in evidence-based reading and writing. So that placed us second among our comparable communities, and we also believe that this is a point to be celebrated. So I think we had approximately 76 students that would be in that category if you're looking at quantifying it. Okay, continuing to look at SAT evidence-based reading and writing at the page of, bottom of page 8 in your report. The green oval on the screen shows race and ethnicity scores for Portage Public Schools. So in this data set, when the number of students drops below 30, in any particular grouping of students, data is not publicly available. This leads us to having a smaller comparable set information, but you can see how our students performed compared to at least the state and one other district within all 3 groups. And I think we had approximately 22 students within the African American Black subgroup or groups of students within that category. The other would be white, and then it's hard to see on here. But you see how it's broken up into 3 categories. You have white, Black, African American, and blue, and then other than white is how they break it down. And again, that's how it's broken down into my school data in terms of how this data is reported.
Hey, is other than white inclusive of the Black African American number?
I believe it is not.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a group by itself?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll confirm. And
Because the math would be hard to do if,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I'll confirm that, Kurt, and get back to you guys so you have an accurate report.
Does that include Spanish speaking?
Other than white, I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah. So moving to the SAT math scores, which is on page 9 in your packet. When looking at all students relative to our comparator districts, the percentage of college readiness for PPS is at 49%. That places us 4th among our comparable communities. It is important to note that the top performing schools you see, 51%, 52, and 52, that brings us only 3% points behind the top comparable district. So 4th obviously is not where we want to be, but at the same time, achieving closer towards the top is very attainable. It's only moving a few kids in that category. Our economically disadvantaged students on the SAT math show that 20% of students are college ready, which drops us down to 7th place among our comparable communities. We were at 30% in 2019, which you'll see when we look at the trend data towards the end of the report. This is not good, and it's definitely an area in which we need to focus and grow on. That's only 3% above the state average. That doesn't reflect the standard that we've set in the district by any means, and we'll do better. We have to do better.
How many students fall into this group?
If that was economically disadvantaged, it was around 76 students. So 20% of the 76 students met the benchmark in mathematics in terms of college readiness. Finally, looking at our SAT math explicitly for the 2021 school year as aggregated by race and ethnicity for the reportable numbers, we can see the percentage of students that are college ready in all three groups. Again, we can only compare to one other district and the state in this category. All right, taking a look at the next set of charts in Monitoring Report 1.1 on page 10, we highlight some of our trend information over the past few years. You'll be able to reflect on these graphs in the report packet as it allows you to see the changes and trends that have happened from the state and in each of our comparable communities. In the 2021 school year, 73% of our students were college ready in evidence-based reading and writing, compared to 77% in 2019. Again, that's kind of our comparable year, the last year that we had the majority of our students face-to-face, a true school year. That would be the 18-19 school year. But we're typically used to being in the high 70s versus the low 70s over the last 4 to 5 years. So you can kind of see the change there.
You know, the data that says the state went up is hard to understand when our whole group went down on that graph.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they went from 58, 55 to 57, and everybody in our group went down. It just, I mean, not only us, but everybody else did too. So
Yeah.
that state number's hard to figure out.
It
as
is.
far as,
Yeah, we'll double check with Melissa on that one, but I believe it's
well, I'm not saying it's
accurate.
wrong, but it's just
Yeah.
hard for me to, where that change, the math changes for the whole state.
Yeah. Going to the math trend data, as shown on page 11 in your packet, this does present some areas of focus for us. It's noticeable that a number of our comparable districts also had similar trend results in the 2021 school year. The overall information indicates that we do have an opportunity to make a positive impact by focus on these results in our math instruction. We had 49% of our students were college ready in spring 2021. That's compared to 59% in 2019, which was up from 51% in 2018. So 2019, we had some favorable results, and we're kind of back to how we were in the 17-18 school year. So we'll have to keep an eye on that as we move forward. Looking at our PSAT 9 and 10 results, this is on page 12. We get some new information to add to our monitoring report. Our 9th and 10th grade students showed an increase in the overall percentage of college readiness in evidence-based reading and writing. Certainly this data set shows a positive increase, but we do know that the number of students assessed in the PSAT 9 and 10 is short of our overall numbers that we're typically used to seeing at each grade level. So we had approximately 70% in 9th and 10th grade tested last spring. So a lot lower than our 85 or 86% that we saw at the SAT level. So this is one of the places where COVID had an impact on our data. And that being said, it doesn't take away from the performance of the students who tested on the PSAT, and I think that's to be celebrated. Looking at the same PSAT 9-10 results for math on page 13 in your booklet, we see a similar increase in the percent of students that are college ready. We do have historical information for the PSAT 9-10, but we do not have comparable district data on these two assessments. So that's one area that is not available in my school data, which is where the comparable data is collected from. All right, next steps. We continue to do our work around continuous improvement, and this data set includes in that work with all of our high school teams. We also will be using some of our math and evidence-based reading and writing results with not only our English and math departments, but also with science, social studies, and world language. These results help support our preparation for this school year, especially during the pandemic, continues to help us identify students' learning needs and to be able to strengthen our priority standards in each of our courses. Our overall academic strategy is unchanged, and that is to continue to improve our Tier 1 instruction for all students. Tier 1 instruction is the instruction that happens in the classroom. We've also conducted our fall PSAT 8-9 assessments for 9th grade, and this Wednesday we have close to 97% of our juniors registered to take the PSAT and MSQT, so those look like favorable numbers. We'll get results back early November and address target areas at the classroom level and during our SAT prep sessions at each of our high schools. As we do this work, again, we are careful and cautious to ensure that we're responding to the impact of COVID on student learning as well as on the authenticity and reliability of our data with a large national screener like PSAT and SAT. We'll also continue to support students from a social, emotional, and mental health well-being in order to give them the best chance at success within our curriculum and academic performance on these high-stake assessments. I do want to thank Melissa O'Keefe in our CAA office for her data and reporting skills. She's the Wizard of Oz behind all of these reports and graphs. I'd also like to thank all of our high school educators who are instructing students, helping them reach their maximum potential here in Portage Public Schools. And thanks to each trustee on our board for listening and for your continued support as we navigate another challenging school year. So I'm happy to try and answer any questions that you may have concerning the data, and if there's anything I'm unable to answer, I'll make sure I jot down and bring back to the team and send it to Mark so he can get that information to you.
Thank you, I love the numbers, so, I mean, it's fun stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Kurt.
Yeah, Michael, a highlight of the year report. A lot of really good stuff here, and a lot of things that we should be proud of, and all the folks across the district can be proud of. And so I just wanted to underscore that. And then the the figure that jumps out to me is kind of a point for focus, kind of a yellow flag or a red flag on it is performance of African American students and some of the test scores. And I know it gets tricky because the sample size is small, so it means that number can get weird and it can jump around. So I just, as a trustee, I certainly don't have any recommendation. I just want to state that, that would be the one area that, it's, as a trustee, my eyes are drawn there and I have concern.
Yeah, our standard should be, or is, way above the state average, when we see it dipping down close to that. So hopefully there's a sense of urgency, throughout the district to help turn that in a different direction.
I would just add that about the math scores overall, I think are concerning, and I don't know how we remedied that. I think that's maybe been an ongoing challenge with some different math curriculums over the last couple decades, and I don't know what you do about it. The thing I was impressed about is how many kids did take the tests. So that's good. We're still missing a number, but it's not like half or significantly more than that. I'm really impressed that so many kids did show up for the tests.
Yeah, no, even in these fall assessments, when we did PSAT, we almost had 100% of all of our middle schools take that PSAT 8 for that fall screener, if you want to call it that. So that, it's getting better as we get into the 21-22 school year, but, looking back at last spring, seeing those numbers, 85, 86% for SAT and in the 70s for PSAT 9, 10, that's something to be proud of for sure.
What did you say was the number of students registered for Wednesday?
What's that, Doc?
You said there was a number of students who were registered for Wednesday.
For Wednesday, we have the PSAT and MSQT at the high school level, and we have 97% folks registered for it, in terms of our junior class.
Okay.
That's the national merit qualifier for them. So hopefully all 97% show up. That's how many, we have a few more booklets, obviously, in
good,
case we get that extra 3% there.
That's pretty good.
Well, we appreciate the report, and all the work behind the numbers here is very easy to understand, and to me, it just drives home the need to keep kids in school learning in person. You can certainly see the impact of COVID here, so appreciate all the work and the report, Michael. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thanks for your support. Thank you.
And one other question. You did say that you gave the number of students who were virtual at the high school level. Do you have the number of who might be participating in the testing on Wednesday, or is already included in the 97%? Those who are virtual?
Of our virtual?
Yes.
Yeah, that includes
That it
all
includes
of,
them.
yeah,
Okay.
that includes
Okay.
all of our juniors regardless of
Okay, regardless of-
instructional modality.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. We're at our comments and communications section. Has anyone signed up to speak to the board? Okay, are there any comments from board trustees then, please?
Mark, I appreciated getting a copy of your communications or the high school principal's communications with parents about the TikTok issue. And it's disturbing. And I hope that there can be some remedy for some of these pranks, if that's what you want to call it.
I guess, just once again, I just continue to like to thank the staff at all levels. These are trying times, and so when you have students do like the TikTok stuff, and I know it's challenging for kids coming back, and you know, our bus drivers, our parents, so many people are kicking in, the food people, supplying food to everybody now, you know. I'm sure there's a lot more kids eating, and Susan probably has less staff, and then some of the stuff that teachers are having to, I mean, it's you know, it's tough for all occupations, but I'm just really proud of how everybody in our district seems to be trudging through this and you know, just addressing this head on, so on all levels. Even parents, you know, with the say transportation issues for after-school events, parents are getting together, getting kids to tennis tournaments and cross-country meets and what have you, when the transportation's not always available. So, I mean, everybody's being creative. I even got a email from Mr. Edwards inviting me for bus training. So it is. Everybody's being creative. Everybody's working hard, and it's appreciated.
So what day are you going?
I'm afraid there to cheer you on. Well, I wanted to pass on a comment from a gentleman who actually asked if I would pass this on, but he wanted to remain anonymous. But he had 3 kids go through Portage schools, and all 3 ended up at different Ivy League colleges. One is, they're all close to finishing or finished with their education. They're a doctor, an attorney, and a financial guy. And he said he couldn't help but have some apprehension as they headed off into these lofty institutions against the cream of the crop around the country. A lot of kids coming from prep schools of the Northeast. And the message he wanted to have passed on is they more than held their own and excelled in every way. And the preparation they got through the Portage schools was just, to him, in retrospect, incredible. So I'm pleased to pass on that comment.
That was my first time at the Portage Invitational. I have a grandson that was running, and it was a great event. I understand it all now. It says it's advertised as the premier, event in the state, and it certainly is. And the neat part about it is I got to interact with a lot of parents, and every one of them talked about what a great year their kids are having at Portage schools. that they appreciate the fact that our policies have been consistent this school year and that their kids are in school and that they're able to work. So kudos to everyone in the district. Just tagging onto your comments, Rusty, everybody's working hard and doing the best they can to work through a lot of different issues to make this a successful year, and I think parents are noticing that. Their kids are having a good year. It's good to hear. Anything else? Okay, let's move to the consent agenda. On page 6, yeah. Okay, we have 5 items tonight. First is approval of the minutes from the September 27th, 2021 Policy Governance Retreat and the regular business meeting in closed session. And then the next 4 approvals were, all these items were discussed at our last meeting. The second one, that the Board of Education approve as presented the purchase of sound equipment and supplies for the West Middle School Little Theater from TPC Technologies in the amount of $8,131.92, the funds for which will come from the 2019 bond fund, proposal number 1, unallocated contingency. The third item on the consent agenda is that the Board of Education approve as presented the purchase of video equipment and supplies that will be used in all auditoriums from B&H Photo in the amount of $11,650, the funds for which will come from the 2019 bond fund, proposal number 1, unallocated contingency. And finally, number 4, that the Board of Education approve the Professional Development Advisory Committee members as presented. Are there any exceptions to the consent agenda? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. And we'll now move to our assurance of district performance section of the agenda, where we make sure we're doing the right things the right way. And the first one we have is Monitoring Report 2.1, Treatment of Consumers. Is there a motion, please? I believe Barb handed them out.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make the motion the Board of Education accept Monitoring Report 2.1, Treatment of Consumers, as a reasonable interpretation and evidence of compliance with policy.
Thank you, Kurt. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Mark?
This is, I left the interpretation basically the same in 2.11 on the gathering of data. We typically use the parent satisfaction instrument that we plan on resuming again later this school year, but we believe last year we needed to deviate for that for both students and from parents, and to get some pulse check surveys to give us some quick information on our return to learn plan and what we could do better. So we did 30-day surveys and then again 90-day surveys to accomplish that. And so the narrative on the report there is really relative to the pulse check surveys, not to the traditional parent satisfaction surveys. So you can see there, some of the areas that we focused on, where parents thought we were doing well, and some things that we needed to improve. This fall, we just completed pulse check surveys at the 30-day mark. Last week, we should be getting results sometime this week. But we did students, parents, and employees as well. And we'll do that this first quarter, and then I believe next spring we'll return to the traditional parent satisfaction surveys, which I think will be a permanent location for time for that in the spring after parents have had a greater exposure to the education year in the spring of the year. So I point that out. That's incorporated in the report. There are no significant changes in other parts of that report. I do want to mention on page 8 of the monitoring report that we've kind of converted all of our enrichment class information to be online. So we're no longer publishing a booklet that has all that information. It's all online. And then also note that we have not offered any enrichment classes since fall of 2020 because of the impacts of COVID. And I think those are the only things, everything else is pretty traditional from what you've received in years past. So happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions for Mark? I just want to thank you for going through the detail on the parent satisfaction surveys and the pulse surveys. Thank you. That's good. That's good. So let's get this approved. All those in favor of approving monitoring report 2.1, treatment of consumers, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes and the monitoring report's approved. Our next monitoring report is 2.5, financial condition and activities. Is there a motion, please, on page 52?
President Van Antwerp, I move that the Board of Education accept monitoring report 2.5, financial condition and activities, as a reasonable interpretation and evidence of compliance with policy.
Thank you, Terry. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Same here again, the report has, and the interpretations are unchanged. I think kind of the big piece on this one here is the 7% fund balance, and you'll notice that that's well above that. Even though our planned expenditures on the budget that the board adopted for this year are in excess of $700,000, that's still, we're estimating that our fund balance will be nearly $13 million, which is about 13% of our expenditures. And so no time during the school year did the fund balance drop below that, and nor is it intended to for this coming school year. The other item I wanted to point out was on page 6 of the report. Just those expenditures that exceeded $100,000 were all approved by the board. Most of those were from the bond fund. 6 of those exceeded, of the 17 contract awarded this past year, exceeded $100,000. And in addition, the board approved several other items there that are listed. A lot of them are technology related for this past year. And there were 2 from the general fund. That's for the GRBS services, our custodial services, and for the city of Portage for our school resource officers. So those are the only things I wanted to bring to your attention on that report.
Any questions for Mark?
I'll bring up what I bring up every year when we talk about this, is we still have this huge unfunded pension liability that is unaccountable for anything that we've decided to pay for. I believe it's well over $100 million, and the state makes us report it on our thing. They say not to worry about it, but it's still there. And it's nothing, from Mark's point of view, it's out there, and we have to be aware of it.
Thanks, Kurt. Well, outside of that, this is a great report. I think we ought to approve it like right now. All those in favor of approving monitoring report 2.5, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The monitoring report is approved. And we'll now move to our third monitoring report tonight, 2.8, conflict of interest. Is there a motion, please, on page 63?
Yes, Mr. President, make the motion that the Board of Education accept monitoring report 2.8, conflict of interest, as a reasonable interpretation and evidence of compliance with policy.
Thank you, Keith. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Terry.
Other than changing the date on that, there really are no changes to this report. It's, we've got a great organization. I think people are very conscious of, raising any conflicts of interest that they exist as the way the policy is written, and pleased to report that I think there have been no violations of this year.
Excellent.
Not that there have in years past either, but just continued no violations.
Any questions for Mark? All those in favor of approving monitoring report 2.8, conflict of interest, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes and the monitoring report is approved. We'll now move to our action items, and the first one is administrator contracts. Is there a motion, please, on page 69?
Mr. President, I offer the following motion, that the Board of Education approve the changes to benefits in the Administrator Handbook and authorize the superintendent to issue administrator contracts not to extend beyond June 30th, 2023, and with additional compensation in the aggregate to be approved by the board as a part of the amended 2021-2022 budget.
Thank you, Celeste. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Brad is here too, hiding behind the monitors.
I can see everyone but Celeste, so.
Where is?
So, good evening, trustees. Thank you. Bringing to you a change for the administrative contracts. If you recall, at our August meeting, we did authorize step increases for our administrators. But now that we have settled with all of our bargaining groups, we want to move forward with also an additional pay increase on those scales. It is matching what we did with the PEA, which is a 1.5% increase plus a one-time off-schedule $1,000 payment that will be made to the administrators and to our technical and administrative support groups as well, which while not part of this this approval, just letting you know that they will be getting the same amount as well, the 1.5% and the $1,000 one-time payment. Also to the board, we've made some changes to our administrative handbook, mainly updates. The last time it was updated was 5 years ago, which is an eternity in the HR world. So we've made some changes in terms of, like for example, the benefits. We used to provide I believe a $6 a month stipend to someone who didn't take the vision insurance. So that's no longer an option because of changes in our insurance. Everyone has to take it. So we've eliminated that. The biggest change within that is within the retirement incentive, where we've put kind of a graduated scale on that, kind of like you would see in many places with their vesting with 401ks and things like that. That came into play as we realized we had some administrators as they left that we didn't have the opportunity to provide them with any kind of incentive like we do our teachers or administrators who have been here longer. So we put that into place as well.
And these salary changes, I assume, are retroactive.
They will be retroactive to July 1st or to the beginning of the calendar of the year for the administrators.
Great. Any questions for Brad? All those in favor of approving the administrator contracts, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The administrator contracts are approved. Our next action item is the Special Education Parent Advisory Committee membership. Is there a motion, please, on page 79?
President Van Antwerp, I move that the Board of Education approve Sarah Baird and Kendall Newhouse as members of the Kalamazoo-Risa Special Education Parent Advisory Board.
Thank you, Terry. Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you.
And Janine's here to speak to this. This is a action that's required by this board by the K-RESA organization.
Actually, I was just going to turn around. You don't need me. Actually, I would like to thank Sarah Baird and Kendall Newhouse for their service to the K-RESA Parent Advisory Committee meeting. Sarah Baird has been on the board for a really long time, and so we do appreciate her thoughts. Both Sarah and Kendall have students on the Central campus. So we've got a couple of students at Central L, Central Middle, and Central High. So I just wanted to say thank you to the board for nominating them to K-RESA, and then the K-RESA board will in turn take the recommendation and nominate them to the PAC.
Thank you, Janine. Any questions?
Just our thanks to these individuals for their service.
For sure, Bo. Very good. All those in favor of approving the Special Education Parent Advisory Committee members, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes and the committee membership is passed. Our next item is a discussion item beginning on page 81, policy revisions. Mark.
Hopefully the memo provided you enough information to know why these changes are coming at you. Most of them are in order to be aligned with the law so that we maintain accurate policies. There are a couple that are, well, there's one that's a replacement policy on school-sponsored publications and productions. That's there's a rather lengthy policy there that we've made the changes after some discussion. Some of the cost, the financial issues are also required by law for the most part. And They are available for your review. We have them at the office, the hard copies of those. It's been our tradition not to, not to duplicate all that paper for you, but you're certainly welcome to come in and take a look at any of these operational policies before we vote on them next time. Or if you have any questions now or any time between now and next meeting, please feel free to give me a call.
Okay, Mark, thank you. Our last discussion item are the revisions to the end statements that the board discussed at our last retreat. And they're here for the board to take one more look at them. The issue here was trying to find a home for social emotional learning. We wanted to have it included in our global end statements, and we've done that. We decided to make it a separate statement and title it Resilience in Life. And we also wanted the elements of that policy and 1.2 Learning and Leadership Skills bullet pointed, so you can see how it looks in that format. And also ends policy 1.5. We're discontinuing that as we agreed, and elements of that will be moving to other policies and other monitoring reports. Any comments from trustees on this? If we're all fine with it, then we will approve it at our next meeting.
Yeah, Randy, I just want to remind everybody, you know, our global ends statement is Portage schools educate all students to achieve their potential at a level that such that results justify the costs. And our ends is the following end statements all contribute to a successful graduate of Portage Public Schools. And I think this all follows that. And although service to the community is important, it just doesn't follow our end statement. It's important that everybody knows we're going to include that, and service to the community is still near and dear to our policies, but it just doesn't fit into the contribute to successful graduate Portage students. So service to the community involves a lot of stuff that the district does. So I just want to remind us why we removed that. I think, in my mind. So
Sure. Any other comments?
You know, Randy, just to say that the experience of persevering through a pandemic, I think, influenced some of our thinking and choice of words. And so, you know, there's a small silver lining and some growth on our behalf in terms of what we expect.